Aye.
Okay. Approval of past minutes. So the minutes were not sent out, so we will do that at our next meeting.
Mhm.
So at this point, this is privilege of the floor. So any members of the public that would like to address the planning board, members of the public who do not have an application before us tonight, now is the opportunity. And if you do have something to say, to state your name for the board, and you have 3 minutes. Did anybody hear from Liz?
Ms. Thomas, no.
No, Liz Garner.
Oh,
Liz Garner,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Have a vote to have them. Okay, sounds good. So could I get a motion to have Matt Bishop be a voting member tonight?
Yeah. Second.
Yep. All in favor? Aye. Excellent. Thank you, Rich. Yeah. All right. So since there are no takers for privilege of the floor, what we have on the docket tonight is a site plan review for the new Women's Residential Addiction Recovery Center, run by CARS, and I would invite the representatives of the project to come up and talk with us a little bit about your program. Project we did meet with you in March, and so we got quite a thorough review there, and we have some additional information that you've provided us. But if you could just give a brief synopsis.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay. So good evening. My name is Kristen Spard. I am the owner and president of Advanced Design Group. We are the engineers and surveyors who have been working on this project. We've done the engineering here. The survey work was done by T.G. Miller, a local surveyor. And I'm here tonight with some supporting cast, I guess I'll say. So Jessica Jensen is the CEO of CARS, and so she is here and can speak about any questions you may have about operations, things that happen inside the building or on the property. We've got Steve Knapp, is here with Catholic Health. Q Medical Center, sorry. And Steve is likely going to be spearheading or overseeing the construction at some point. They've become involved in the project. So he's here tonight too. We also have, is our John and Ivan on the phone? Okay, so we've got Ivan Garcia from FFAE. John is in the waiting room. Oh, okay, there's apparently one of our people is in the waiting room. So Ivan is the architect. Ivan's participating virtually. He was here at the last meeting, but he is on the phone and available virtually. And I guess my goal today would just be to kind of catch you all up on where we are with things, what's changed, what we're approaching in the near future, and then kind of just answer any questions you may have. And ideally, cue this up so that the next time we're in front of you, hopefully we can get approval. So where we are in the process, as most of you know, we did receive site plan approval in 2019. And due to COVID and circumstances beyond our control, the project sat and the site plan approval expired. So we ended up coming back with the intent to make application to renew the site plan in a slightly modified, less, it was smaller, it was less intense due to cost savings and value engineering that needed to happen post-pandemic. And so we intended to come in with a site plan only to discover that in our absence, the property had been rezoned. So under the new rezoning, the exact same site plan now needs a few different variances. And we are currently under application with the BZA to present those variances at their May 17th meeting. And our goal would be to leave that meeting ideally with approval of our variances. So we fully understand that because those variances are necessary, we can't obtain site plan approval tonight. But what we'd like to do is present it as though we were looking for site plan approval tonight. That way, if there are any outstanding issues, we can take care of that before the next meeting. Now, I will throw out one thing that we're going to ask in for discussion is schedule-wise and logistically, the next 3 weeks don't necessarily work ideal. And your next planning board meeting is on the 16th. This next CBA meet or BZA meeting is on the 17th. So I didn't know if things go well and if you guys all felt that it was appropriate to see if we have a special planning board meeting or something after the BZA meeting or something like that, so we didn't have to wait a whole other month. But that's something that we wanted to ask, and we can talk about that at some point. So,
Yeah, I would have just addressed that. Really, with the BZA meeting being the 17th,
Mhm.
our next planning board meeting would be about 2 weeks after that,
Yep.
because it's the first Tuesday in June.
okay,
So that's when we would schedule it.
okay, so then there's no special meeting option or anything.
Yeah.
Good,
Thank
it's on the
you.
way.
Okay.
So a quick overview of what we're dealing with here. I think, are most of you familiar with the site and
Mhm.
are familiar with the history of the project? Do I need to get into all of that?
I have some questions about it, but I'll wait till you finish your presentation. I
Yeah,
know,
so just a quick overview is, as you all know, it's on Route 227.
Mhm.
And there is an existing facility that is approximately 20 years old. And that facility, along with all the infrastructure and the improvements, are shown on our existing conditions plan.
Mhm.
And our proposed conditions really leave the majority of this as is. And our new building is up to the north. And it's in the same location, more or less, as it was the first time around. We just had to move things a little bit for the zoning and things, so some of the setbacks change, things like that. But for the most part, everything is as it was originally under application, or slightly less. So things like the number of parking spaces that are required are less because the square footage of the building is less. And we went through and did some value engineering again because of post-COVID prices on everything. But for the most part, everything is exactly as it was originally approved. The variances that we need, I think there are 3. So the first one we need is the same one that we needed previously, which is coverage. So we're gonna look to reinstate, or wait, did that variance stay with the property? My apologies, that variance already exists because it stays with the property. So the other ones that we're looking for, under the new zoning, you can only have one building on the property, one primary building, so we do have a second building, that's the first variance. Then we have the variance where the maximum square footage of a building is 5,000 square feet. So we need that variance because our new building is larger than 5,000 square feet. I think that was it, right?
Some outline questions that sound like conditions that the BZA place.
Yeah, but in terms of variance, those are the only two that, other than the building square footage. So we are going back to BZA on the 17th, like I said, to reaffirm everything and to hopefully get those 2 variances.
So I got word from the chair this morning that both the chair and vice chair, will not be in attendance. And then there's discussion with the other board members to either hold a hearing or hold a meeting with a hearing, hold a meeting without a hearing, or just table the whole meeting altogether, and they decided to table May altogether.
Because we got postponed in April too. So now this is gonna push everything to June. Okay. There's not much we can do.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll ask, is there an option for them to reschedule the meeting for another day?
You could make a request.
How, well, I can talk with you about it. Yeah, only because we were tabled in April too, so it's just kind of pushes everything. And the reason that these approvals, it's a little different with this type of project than it would be for like private development or some sort of commercial development, because it's private money being invested. Unfortunately, what happens when you have government money and funds like this, nobody really wants to invest anything unless certain criteria are met. And these approvals are hinging, there's a lot of things hinging on these approvals, because it's a step in the commitment. So we can talk about that, I guess, offline. Okay, so that is a quick overview, and I know you guys probably have questions, so we can just jump right into those unless there's something you want me to talk about that I haven't yet.
I just want to say to the planning board that because it's in the ag zone, it's not just a site plan review, it's also like a special permit,
Sorry, I missed
special
it.
permit requirements. So, I know we're familiar with those, but they are in 21218. And just keep those in mind as we ask questions too.
Isn't it already a special permit for the primary? Isn't it under a special permit?
Yeah,
already?
because it's ag, so it's like sort of a
Right.
greater,
So
a great-
it's
a
because
somewhat
we're
greater
expanding
review.
the special permit,
because it got zoned ag
right?
and before it was residential, so it just, it
Oh.
requires this additional layer of,
There was no special use permit before the
Right.
rezoning. It wasn't
Right.
needed. So once it was
Oh.
rezoned,
Okay,
yeah,
it wasn't.
there's
Yeah.
more to it than I'm about to
That's
say, but
Mhm.
once you rezone it, if you rezone it to something that requires a special use
Right.
permit, it's grandfathered.
Right,
So any expansion beyond that is why we're here.
mhm. Okay,
okay.
yes, go for it. Go
I
for
have
it.
a series of questions, but I just want to clarify some of the history. I remembered this when it came through about 3.5 years ago, and if I recall, it was a much bigger piece of property that extended into Enfield town, and
It's still there. It's just not graphically shown.
so you're showing the property boundary, but you're not showing the actual, so you didn't get, so at the time, you were given a variance for a restricted covenant that said you would not do any development on the adjacent property, and in return, you would get certain things allowed. But you're telling me, and so I thought perhaps you had sold the property,
No, no,
but,
no.
so it's
No, it's-
all that restricted covenant then was never codified,
It's never what?
or confirmed because of the delay, is that correct?
No, I think the restrictive covenant was put in place.
Was it? I'm asking, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, I believe so. We will confirm that and get back to you for the next meeting.
Mhm.
But I do believe it was put in place because we built a septic system
I
on
know,
there.
that's the next question.
And I thought that covenant had to be in place before they would give the permit for the septic system.
Okay, that's
But
what I
that
was
is,
interested
that
in.
was under,
What's
do you guys
previous
remember? Anybody?
That would be, septic would go through the county department, so
Mhm.
they.
Right. Yeah,
Except
Mhm.
it was part of that covenant, because it's not on these maps. I'm not seeing the wastewater for this or the new
Mhm.
property, the new building. And is that because they're all on the adjacent property or the
the
adjacent
new
part?
building is here. The
Uh-huh.
adjacent property is back up over here.
Yep.
That's what all of this is.
Yep.
Um,
And where's the wastewater on that map? The
It's right
wastewater
here.
system?
it's back here.
Show me on
it's
the
up
one up
here.
there. Yeah, off the piece you're
Yep.
showing us. Right, so we're not seeing any of that.
No, it's all built, it's
Mhm.
considered an as-built condition, and
Mhm,
it's all underground. So the features that we could survey have been surveyed and as-built
mhm,
on our site plan, such as the pump station, the pipe
Mhm.
runs, things like that.
mhm.
But the actual leach field and everything is on a whole separate property.
Right, and that leach
field.
field, I mean, it's your property, but it's under a covenant in terms of what you can do with it.
It's my understanding, and I don't want to misspeak, I thought the entire Carr's property was under the covenant. Like they
Mhm.
couldn't do any further expansions
Mhm.
once that variance was
Okay.
granted.
And so is the wastewater treatment facility underground taking into account the 25 new beds?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that's why I was
Mhm.
there.
great.
Yep, that solved a couple problems, solved an existing problem and took care of the future.
Okay, so that was my first question.
Yep.
You guys have some other questions before I go to my next one?
Go for it.
Okay,
Yeah,
You're on a roll.
so on the upper edge of the property is this impermanent stream. That's the property boundary. If I'm looking at, no, leave that one right there. You can actually see it.
I have it surveyed, we went out and surveyed it.
It does not show on these maps, or it's on, maybe I'm
Because it's off-
misreading.
It's right off the property until you get down into here.
Mm.
You're saying it's off the property.
Yeah, up in
It's-
here. It comes down where a building is, because the building has to be 50 feet from the
Yep.
top bank. So we went out and surveyed it, and the
Uh-huh.
building is 50 feet from that top. bank.
Right, but it's not just the building. Nothing's allowed to be constructed or developed. And if I read,
It will
the
be
next map.
grading.
you also have a swale.
Yeah, it's a grading scale.
You're not
And-
allowed to do any of that in that 50-foot buffer. It has to be totally vegetated and trees and all. You're not allowed, if
There's
I'm
nothing-
reading that correctly.
Okay, we will look into that. I left all the previous discussions, because this came up with John Zepko,
Mhm,
and I left all previous discussions of that swale
mhm.
was not what that regulation applied to. It
Alright.
was improvements in infrastructure and hardscape or buildings or paving, but because we were just putting the swale in and then it's gonna be left, it has to be left as natural as part of the species requirements. We actually, we call it in our calculations, it's a conflict, we get credits for it to return it back to natural.
Okay, so let's definitely check on that, because one, it's an impermanent creek. We do require a buffer. It's the, and as you see, the stream is on the Tompkins County Vortex map, and they have it listed as a 100-foot buffer. Now, maybe, again, I just glanced at it and I might be misreading it, but right now you're definitely working within the buffer, which is trees and left alone. And so grading is not allowed, is my understanding. So let's check on that,
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely.
Alright.
And if that becomes a thing, it's not a project killer. What that just means is that I've got to figure out something else to do with my drainage.
Mm.
Okay. The next question I have, and I think, Mel, I'm gonna need your help on this one.
I'm sorry,
You
before
know,
we leave that
I-
topic,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you just said something that I wasn't aware of. Is it the county, you think, who regulates that stream has a 100-foot buffer?
Take a look at the
Um,
Tompkins County
yeah.
geocortex, which is what we're
Oh,
gonna, so our maps are very old, right? It's the USGS topo maps. I helped create the stream buffer 18 years ago for the town, but it's old, all those, and so the recent conversations with ZBA and Niels is that we need, obviously, those older maps are no longer appropriate. We'll switch to the Tompkins County geocortex maps, which they've done a really nice job with. When you go and look at them, they show you 100-foot buffer, and I'm not sure why. So
yeah, because
I mean, so here, they're printed
Yeah.
out.
I
You wanna,
our zoning set in ag was
Mhm.
50.
Yeah.
And it was until
Mhm.
you get to,
that's why,
yeah, okay.
but
Mhm.
if Tompkins County hasn't put that in place, I don't know. It supersedes what it's more rigorous than ours. We have to check into that. I
Right.
Is
don't,
that a new thing? Because that,
I don't know. I just went and looked at it today and looked at
Yeah.
where the map of the stream was and had it put the buffer in, and it goes 100-foot buffer.
Mhm.
Now, it could be 50 feet on either side. I haven't contacted Tompkins County Planning to
but
ask
it's in
them.
it's in that cortex map?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
And is that? I've had those in other communities. I've not seen it for here. Is that a new thing?
I don't know. I haven't checked on the
Mhm.
Tompkins County, what. They've changed their internet mapping system, their interactive mapping system in like past 3 years. It's a different mapping system, so the way they're buffering, and I don't know. It's not the same look as it had 2.5 years ago. I don't know whether that's reflecting. you know,
Also, I
something.
mean, the buffer it's different by the zone. So like if you're in a park zone versus an ag zone versus a residential zone is different. So if you had that discussion with John Zepko when he originally came through before it was rezoned, you may have a different setback now. So it's just something that we,
Okay.
I mean, I'm looking this up, right? Yeah,
Yeah, but
So-
ag is 50.
Ag is
and it's Not
50.
till you get to conservation that I
That
think it
it's-
turns to 100.
It's just the
Yeah.
definition
I
of what
think
that
you're right.
50
Yeah.
limits. That's the
Mhm.
question.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Okay, the next question, and I need, Mo, I think I need your input, and also the MS4 requirement. So we're part of our town is an MS4, which puts us under restrictions on what happens with development over 1 acre, et cetera.
Right.
All those guidelines kick in. And Boulder Creek feeds to Tagana Creek, and so which I think is part of the MS4. If that's true, do you remember whether the requirement says you cannot, all stormwater has to stay on site? Because you have it going into the basins and draining out into the roadside ditch.
Yeah, after it goes through the treatment. So you guys don't have a town engineer. So we were working with Jimmy, Joe. Oh my goodness. Jimmy Joe. I'm trying to blank on his name, but so he actually works for the county, and from what I understand, if the town chooses, he will review this next revision, but he reviewed it because he's the MS4 guy. He works for the Stormwater Coalition.
Mhm.
So he came to us with some questions. We've been working back and forth with him because, as you know, our site plan is in a little bit of a dynamic state because of all of this. So we got all of his questions answered as to what our solution is going to be once we know what's going to happen with the site plan. So
Uh-huh.
the MS4 will apply here, and the town will have to act as an MS4, but there is no requirement where you have to not discharge. You have to treat for water quality and water quantity, and you have to reduce the volume of the flows based on all their calculations, and this meets everything. So in addition to that, the intensity tables were modified after Hurricane Sandy came through. So this has all been updated to the current speedy standards.
Right, so in that same context, again, talking to the zoning board of appeals, the 3.5 year ago event, when that covenant restriction was put into place, they had other restrictions, and you had to use the 500-year storm,
Yep.
not, okay, so this is based on the 500-year
This is
storm.
based on the 500-year storm, but
Okay.
full disclosure, we are going to be asking for them to remove that, and here's why. When they put that in place, the effects of Sandy were fresh on everyone's head. And it wasn't just Sandy, it was a couple other just different situations. So everybody recognized that our storms were changing and our weather was changing, but the process that's run by DEC and EPA needed to be updated with their variables and with the input data to reflect current situations and current rainfall. So at the time that we were doing the previous design, that came up. And so that's where the 500-year storm came from.
Yep.
And prior to coming to the meeting and being told about the 500-year storm, we had been, I guess, notified that that was something that was potentially going to come up because of its proximity to those creeks along the
Yeah,
frontage.
yeah, we're about flooding and
Yes,
damaging
so-
Gigantic Creek.
They, there was a gentleman on the board, and I don't remember his name, but I believe he worked at Cornell and he was involved with water, he was very knowledgeable. And his stance was he didn't want to approve the variance unless this was addressed because additional buildings would trigger additional flow and he wanted to make sure it was covered. So prior to even coming to the meeting, we had modified our variables to reflect what we thought they were going to become when EPA changed them. But then he put that 500-year storm thing on also. So everything's designed to that. Since then, in the past 3.5 years, the entire calculation process for speedies has been modified with our input data. It used to be we would read a nomograph or a chart.
Right,
Now it's based on coordinates. You type in your coordinates actually for the project, and then it actually tells you what your rainfall intensity is. So you could have one intensity here, and instead of all of town of Ulysses having the same intensity, you could have one here, and then they figured out what it is 20 miles away.
is that through DEC, there's speedies permit application, and they'll have a site for it where we can put the coordinates in?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
the site is not posted by the DEC, I believe it's NOAA,
mhm,
but the link, if you go to the DEC speedies construction
uh-huh,
toolbox, there's,
Yep.
that's just one of many host sites that are
Right.
linked to help you fill. We used to have to research all that on
right,
our own.
right. And so that's, but the speedies one doesn't do one in 500 years.
It doesn't do the 500-year, but the reason he wanted the 500-year was because he did not, and he was accurate at that point, he did not feel that the input data and everything reflected what the current events were showing. But now, everything has been modified. So the calculations and the input data and everything that we're using is what the government is providing to address what they feel is the current scenario with these additional rainfalls we're getting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting
So-
to take a look at that. I
Yeah.
think it's probably
Yeah.
still very conservative, and our intent is really to be really careful. I mean, you getting flood water into Gigantic Creek would
In-
have such an impact on our economy, our visit, 1 million visitors a year. And that's why we're being careful about this. So I'll take a look at what the DEC.
Yep.
I mean, as you know, they used to be really behind, 30 years behind. I'll
Mhm.
take a look at it and then,
If you have trouble locating the information that you need,
mhm,
um,
I can find it. You
Yeah.
told me it's in the DEC speed
Yeah,
permitting. I
just
can
if-
find that.
he knows how to reach me or my plans,
Yep.
plans call me.
Yep.
Because I work with it all the time. And then do you know what Don Lake is?
I am going to be seeing Down Lake at the Fuller Conference this weekend.
Ask
Yes.
him.
Okay.
So ask him, and honestly, I'm very curious to what he would say. Like, I
Uh-huh.
want to make sure, like, everything I'm telling you is what the coalition has said, what
Mhm,
all of my PDA courses are saying,
mhm,
and what we've experienced real time.
mhm.
But Don's like the guy,
Yeah, okay.
you know, so he was very, he was very involved in it. It was started by New Jersey, by NJCAT. They started it, and then New York and Don Lake and the coalition kept it going.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
On your application, I noticed a lot of areas that have not been checked, either yes or no.
The seeker or the application?
The application. Well, yes, one of them is about water, which would be D1,
Might I look over your shoulder?
and yeah. And then there's a lot more, like all these down here, and they would either say,
Oh,
Yes
no,
or
they,
no.
this is all been,
well,
This
this
is
is what
all-
we have.
yeah, this is the
Mm.
first
See how
I've heard
many-
of it.
There's-
Unfortunately,
They're all empty.
and that there's some population issue going on. Those are filled out on the site, and I apologize, I didn't know that that's how it transmitted.
Yeah, well, if you would
is the
please go
paper-
through that.
Does the paper copy look like that too?
So D1
Can-
is showing as populated.
Yeah, like,
Are you talking about the seeker right now?
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought we would go through the seeker just a little later, like go
okay.
through it more.
okay, well, I just noticed a lot of.
Yeah, no, that's great.
check
Yeah,
marks.
yeah.
Because
All
I
right.
filled it
And one
out
of
on
them is
the,
what we're talking. about,
Yeah, exactly.
water.
Yeah.
I filled
Um,
it out on the website.
It's
Yeah,
filled
okay.
out. Okay. So is that just we'll go through the seeker just more formally in
Okay.
a
okay,
minute. Okay.
good.
I just wanted to clarify that for the town of Ulysses, the setback on either side of the creek is 50 feet.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, whether you can have a swale in that or not, I don't
That-
know the answer to that personally. like,
and
off the top of my head.
I remember the language, and I could be wrong.
Mhm.
It was called a setback, not a
Mhm.
buffer.
So this here is this is a buffer.
Okay, so that says buffer?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, let's see. Yeah, it's buffer standards. So it's 212, 124. Yeah, okay. So I did have another question. As a special permit, one of the requirements is that the site is able to meet capacity for, for all of, all necessary uses. And so with, like with your fire suppression system in your original building, you've got a sprinkler system. We'll have a sprinkler system in this building. Where does the capacity come from to operate two systems that are, kind of equal size?
and that is a question, that is a very good question.
Mhm,
We actually were meeting with TG Miller today.
mhm,
So TG Miller is on board. This is a very involved, dynamic discussion.
mhm.
That's got a lot of moving parts. I'm not sure how much you want me to get into it with you.
I guess I wanted to know two things. Are you looking to, I mean, you can get into it with me as much as you want. So maybe if you're gonna do like a pond,
We don't
right?
know yet.
Like,
So
where would that go? Like, those are all questions that
So
we would
we're-
want to have the answer to.
yeah, and we will have it, but we don't. Go ahead.
No, I did a project where same thing came up because they were using town water, they couldn't use it for
Mhm,
fire because they would suck everything out.
mhm,
So
mhm,
they had to put in a
Mhm.
storage tank,
mhm.
and it was a very large
Mhm.
storage tank with high pressure pumps. It was the only way.
So tell me what you're thinking. What you.
So that is absolutely on the radar. And
Mhm.
there is some end solution that is an exterior improvement of some sort
Mhm.
that is, unless something great changes, but the plan is to figure out what the situation is. So what that looks like, we met with TG Miller today.
Mhm.
They have a history of being involved in this. They're from here, they're local.
Mhm.
They know all the contacts, and so it didn't make sense for me to tackle it. I can do it my way all day long, but this really is a boots on the ground investigation.
Mhm.
So some of the things that we're trying to get answers to is we're trying to figure out, what does the agreement specifically say between the town, the village, and cars?
Mhm.
We're hearing that there's talk that potentially the water district may be extended because other people have connected into that line. We did a hydrant test, but then we were told by an unofficial source that
Mhm.
sometimes they do hydrant tests when the tank isn't full, and now you gotta make sure the tank is full and then do the hydrant test, so you can check the flow and the pressure. So there's just all these things. The very first step is to get to the bottom
Mhm.
of what are we really dealing with, okay?
Mhm.
Then we have to figure out what is the town or the municipality or the owner, utility owner's plans, because we're hearing that they may extend the district. What does that look like? So all of that has to happen. And then we figure out, what are we gonna do? And
Mhm.
so we've got a number of different options, and which option we choose is gonna come down to what do we discover, what do we find out during this
Mhm.
discovery period?
Mhm.
And then which one is gonna be the best option with what we find out. The biggest question is, are we gonna have to provide a temporary fire protection system?
Mhm.
Because the water line's gonna be extended, and suddenly there's gonna be enough water, because there are hydrants at the street, they just don't function right now.
Mhm.
So out my way, that would dictate that those hydrants had to be brought up to fire code
Mhm.
by the agencies that own them. But that's different everywhere you go.
Mhm.
So we just have to wait and see how that all looks. So they know, Cars knows what they're gonna have to
Mhm.
invest in and what they're gonna have to improve. The cost to them is very different from a temporary water storage
Mhm.
versus a permanent water storage.
Mm.
Where we're gonna put it,
Mm.
how big it needs to be, those are all
Mhm.
conversations with the building department and the fire marshal, which the
Mhm.
architect has started. Our mechanical team, our MEPs have identified what pressures and flows we need.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of doing the discovery,
Mhm.
figuring things out, and then coming back with an answer. But we have a number of options. We just don't know which one to go with.
Right. And what kind of timeline are you looking at?
We just talked about all this. That's all. I'm glad we talked about it. So,
It's just-
this is before we knew that BZA was going to be pushed. So we were looking at We still would love to target going to bid at the end of July
Mhm,
and starting construction
mhm,
in the spring. With our goal would be to have this water issue. Again, this is before we knew BCA was gonna delay
Mhm.
things. We were hoping to have things move right along
mhm,
and have the water issue be a condition of approval contingent, or condition of approval prior to granting building permit.
mhm.
But now that we have an extra month, we might have the time we need to
Mm-hmm.
get more answers.
Yeah, because that's one of the questions we have to ask with,
Seeker.
is,
Yeah.
well, and also for special permit too.
Yeah.
So,
And also like, I mean, if you end up building a pond, it's gonna be of significant size and it's gonna change the whole configuration of
Yeah.
your landscape in
yeah.
terms of drainage. So I think we really need to see that before we're gonna approve this.
Well, so if we go with the pond, first of all, the pond isn't the number one choice.
Mhm,
The pond presents every single option that they have.
mhm,
There's pros and cons. So there's some cons to the pond that have to do with their operations. So the pond, it really isn't the number one choice.
mhm,
Holding tanks, underground holding tanks, above ground holding tanks,
mhm.
those are options. If we did do a pond, like, let's just say that ends up being the only option.
Right.
We would be taking the pond that we had to add for the 500-year storm, which is
Mhm.
currently a dry pond, so it fills up during the significant event if
Mhm.
necessary. We would turn that into a wet pond. So the pond is already there. It's just dry, wet, and is only receiving water during significant events. If they end up having to put a pond in for fire protection,
Mhm.
we would then just turn that into a wet pond.
And increase capacity to deal with a storm at the same time.
Because if it's full, then it can't take the storm water.
Right.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
when you do a fire pond,
Mhm.
all of your fire water and the material for fighting the fire is below your normal water.
Got
Okay, so your storage is all above normal. So it doesn't affect your storage at all.
Okay.
Okay,
So you just gotta make sure the standing water body
Mhm.
to within certain number of feet from the bottom of the pond has enough volume. And I think they end up like double or tripling what the demand is for the fire, just make sure you have it.
Mhm.
But then when you start looking at what kind of pumps they're gonna use, the fire department has to take the water out, that dictates how far off the bottom you have to be before you start calculating your volume.
okay. All right, so we'll be seeing those kind of information in the next round of information. you get.
Yeah, as soon as we have the info, we can do
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Good point.
To the border,
Yeah, to your board.
it's, look, we're over 50 to the building, it's right in here, but then down here,
Yeah.
it starts to cut in, and it's
Mhm.
right on this line.
Mhm.
But up here,
Yeah.
we're,
Okay, because your setback line on your is 30 feet.
yeah, but if you look at this dimension here, we're 54,
Uh-huh.
and you look here, we're 82. And it's not on the property up here, that's how we know that we're more than 50 away
Mhm.
with the building.
Okay.
But I considered this to be an improvement. So we've always made sure that this was 50 feet away, because we were treating the sidewalks in the building.
So we'll have to look into that, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
And this is being built on the old septic.
the old septic leach field is right here.
Mhm.
It's, yeah, right, by the parking lot, right?
Yeah, it's right in here.
Right.
It's been decommissioned, it's still there.
Mhm.
The plan was, when this comes out, to utilize the pool to put a bioretention area. So we put an oversized landscape bioretention area in,
Mhm.
again, because of the additional water quality requirements for this protected area. So this is gonna go right where the septic system is coming out.
Mhm.
What
Okay.
kind of soil is it going to be
Where
in that area that you're going to be building?
it's all septic soil. I mean, it's horrible. It's gotta come out. and-
Clay?
I'm pretty sure it's all filled. We're not gonna be digging down too much below the existing leach field
Mm.
cross section. So that's all gonna come out. Everything there is probably compacted. You just gotta call it clay. It's been
So the
traversed. and
drainage
compacted.
isn't very good.
No.
Mhm.
No.
Okay.
But the,
Let me check on one
I don't
thing.
mean to, I'm not trying to offend, but do you know how the bioretention area functions?
I believe so, but you can go through it.
Okay,
I do not.
you do not? Do you know what a bioretention area is?
No.
Okay, so the New York State DEC has regulations they put in place, because the EPA required it, that any project that's going to serve over an acre of land has to be designed and treated for water quality and water quantity. So water quantity is reducing the volume through detention, filtration, things like that. Water quality gets treated through We try and do as many natural ways as we can because it's less maintenance and it's more what the DEC wants. So water quality, you achieve it by disconnecting roof leaders to let it perk into a type B or C soil. Or you can put in a bioretention area. So we use bioretention areas all the time in Western, I'm from Western New York, Niagara. So we use them out there because we're totally flat and it's all clay. So in situations like this, a bioretention area is perfect because we're putting it in a hole. It's essentially a large bathtub that is man-made, and you take a clay material and you create whatever your hole is, your volume that you're sized to hold. You backfill it with 36 to 40 inches of a special material that the DEC identifies. It doesn't exist naturally. It's a composite of sand and gravel and all different things. And it basically acts as a media filter, a natural filter. And then on the top of that, you have 6 inches of topsoil and then grass. So to the eye and plantings, the DEC specifies plantings. It's not supposed to really be mowed. It's supposed to be left to go natural with wildflowers and things like that. It holds a maximum of 6 inches of water. And then the water percolates down through the filter media. And then at the bottom of the filter media, it's funneled down to a perforated pipe. That perforated pipe collects it and it runs all along the length of it. So this whole area here is a bioretention area. It's underlaid by a pipe, perforated pipe, and water will hit the parking lot, sheet flow off the parking lot. It goes over a little stone strip here that's intended to dissipate the water so you don't have channelized flow. And this is all DEC specified. I'm not disagreeing with. And then this is the bioretention area, which I call the bathtub. So this is the perimeter of it. The water will go over that. It'll go down in this, and it just looks like a little swale. But then the bottom of the swale is a porous material, and then it percolates through there. And then it gets collected in the pipe, and then it goes out, and then it joins the rest of the system. So that is intended, and when you design that we have, it ends up splitting the flows. So you have your first flush waters that are super dirty. That's the stuff that doesn't rain for 3 weeks, and it rains, now you're sliding all over. That water is highly concentrated. So your 1 and 2 year storms, which are your minimal amount of rain, but tons of pollution, those will always go to the bioretention area. And the way that it's designed, theoretically, will remove the majority of those pollutants naturally. And over a period of time, eventually in 20, 30 years, you may have to go in and just replace that filter media, but that's all specified in the SWIP or the maintenance plan. So that's what a bioretention area is. It's pre-treatment or treatment for water before it goes into the detention pond or leaves the site.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I give a 4-hour
Um,
presentation. It's called Concept to CO,
Mm,
and
Mhm.
planning boards get credits
Mhm.
for it and stuff.
Mhm.
And I explain from the minute somebody says, I want to buy a piece of land and do something, to the
Mhm.
point where they walk away with their money.
Mhm.
What are all the approvals and steps they have to take?
mhm.
And that's one of the reasons I know all this so much.
That's great. That's great.
Where's the pipe go? I don't see it on this.
You mean the pipe under here?
Yeah.
The pipe won't be depicted, it'll be on the detail,
Oh, okay.
because it's part of the cross section. I don't know. If we can, yeah, here you go.
Oh, it's the red through the center.
Yep, okay, so this is this drives our contractors crazy and developers. This is the degree to which you specify the plantings, and then they have to be maintained and they'll live for a year. This is the cross section, and so you can see all the different media. There's the stone, and these are the yard drains that come up. This is another one. This one's a little bit different configuration, so
Mhm.
that's all of it. So the pipe, like you can see here, the pipe's in the bottom.
Right.
So then the other thing, like I said, you can only, the DEC says you can only hold 6 inches of water in here because too much water over that produces increased time to kill plants.
Mhm.
So what we've done is we put cleanouts that are 6 inches up over the bottom. You can't see them because they're in the plants, but then when the water gets out, it just goes in there.
Mhm.
So that it doesn't get
Oh,
over.
where's the empty?
Goes out to, it merges in with the collector pipe before it goes to the channel,
I didn't see. the-
right there.
Oh, okay. so
It goes into that
okay,
manhole and it
I
goes
figured that's what it-
And it goes, that's where it dumps to the roadside ditch, right? When Route 227?
Yeah, it a little bit upstream from it, but then it does go into it.
And so all the runoff from the parking lot and the rooftop goes to that bioswale, or just the parking lot?
The bio retention area I just showed you,
Mhm.
just the parking lot. Okay, just the parking lot, she flows this way. We
Right,
did have more going there, but then we took this parking lot out,
okay,
so just this.
okay, then where's all the rooftop flow go to?
So the rooftop flow is going back here, so this is drain to drain.
And that's that grassy area that we're talking about, it may overlap with the buffer.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And then where's that tile drain go on the west, on the left side of the chart?
Sorry, say it again.
That tile drain that showed
Right
real
here?
tiny, yeah, what's that?
Okay, so that exists, that's an existing pipe, and we studied it and monitored it, it's picking up water from up here. It doesn't backflow, it functions, and then it just goes through, so it's not in an easement or anything, so we're not even interfering with it. And it just goes straight through.
So you're just connecting it to your
Yep.
pipes
Yep, we're tying it in with our stuff.
underneath the parking lot.
Yep.
So that flow's not being taken into account for the calculations for the bioswale?
No,
It's
it's already
totally
going there,
independent.
it's pass through, it's what we call pass through.
Uh-huh.
Whenever we deal with a pass through,
Uh-huh,
you add it into your model, but it just goes straight through. So you don't include it in your
Uh-huh.
detention or anything like that.
and the rooftop flow runoff doesn't have to be taken care of in any kind of treatment system?
It is, yeah, it is. So with the DEC would prefer for you not to use any hardscape or any infrastructure stuff. So their first option is disconnection. So the roof leaders are disconnected. We're lucky we have some grade change here, and then we have a swale here. So this is a vegetated swale, and then it comes down. This meets the treatment requirements. And then when it goes down, let's see, the swale goes here. Yeah, the grading again. See, the swale goes down. And then this is what the depression we created for the potential 500-year storm backflow. Again, during regular weather, normal weather, this is just gonna look kind of like this. Right? It's gonna go.
Except that's the 15-foot that we're gonna talk about.
Right.
That's up here.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, It's, yeah.
All right, we'll check on that.
And
Great.
then this,
Okay.
so this is the swale. It's
Okay.
it's a grass swale. And the
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
So I just wanted to ask people if they had any other, like, one of the things that happened previously was that the seeker was found to have a negative impact. However, it's been so long, so we need to sort of readdress that. We need to see if we affirm that or not. And it seems like we can't make that decision tonight because we need to know more about the capacity, as far as
the
like
water.
the water capacity and for the fire suppression and also that swale, like, is it okay for it to be in that buffer is one other question that we need answered for that.
So the only thing I would ask for that is just a procedural thing, and I'm not trying to like stick my nose in how you do your business. I just have to always protect the client, make sure that procedures followed and we're all on the same page. The one thing I want to make sure we think about is if you guys decide to revote on seeker and redo seeker, you're gonna have to do a coordinated review because this is a coordinated review. If you reaffirm it, you don't have to redo the coordination. So because everything we're doing here is less than what was originally approved, we were thinking it was just gonna be a reaffirm it. But if you are going to say we need to redo seeker and revote, let's make sure that we're circulating it and going through all that process so that we're not realizing it later and then holding things up. That's all.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I just feel like we can't really act on it tonight, just because we need those pieces of information.
Is it possible either tonight or in the very near future and not wait till the next meeting to make a decision on whether you're going to reaffirm or, because the water issue is no different. The water issue was here before. And so if we're going to reaffirm, we're good. But if you guys are if you decide to do a new vote, we've got 30 days, we've got to solicit for lead agency, and then we've got to do a coordinated review. Those two time blocks are 60 days.
I just want to, I just want to chime in that we're seeing record number of deaths from overdoses nationwide, 50% higher than 2020. I do believe there is some urgency in adding beds and need to have, especially for women, and there's like wait lists for these types of things. And CARS has a outstanding reputation. So I'm certainly don't, I'm all about, as a geek, I am all about getting more information, but I'm also about the urgency of some of these issues. I did want to ask a question about transportation. How do the clients travel to and from the residence? Is it public transit or their own personal cars, or how is that?
Once they are there, generally they're transported, that can be public transportation or personal transportation. Once they are at the residential facility, they actually don't have a personal vehicle on site.
Okay.
And so we provide that transportation to any appointments or things offsite that they need to go to, we provide that.
Okay, so the additional steps won't affect the needed parking for the
It does, but we provided the
provide
parking.
additional parking. Got it.
Yep.
I just wanted to open that discussion to the board and just say what, after having, I mean, obviously we reviewed the seeker prior to the meeting. Be nice to have another piece of information, but how do the members of the board feel in regard to what we do have here? And in regard to the point that she made.
There's a couple other little pieces in the seeker that I feel like we need to get clarification on. And so for me, I'm not comfortable now because there has been a change in the zoning. Some of the things have changed. I'm not real comfortable with how you've dealt with like the buffer zone, which to me is like a given. And so I'm not real happy with what we had. And then the need for extra firewater, you're kind of not really giving us clear, what you're gonna do about it. So I'm not real comfortable with this rubber stamping this, and it's been so long and so many things have happened since you went through the original process. I feel like it really deserves a careful review.
And I fully support that. I just,
Okay.
if there was a way to make a decision of how that looks.
Okay.
Does it look like you reaffirm and you do it as a board? Or do you think it's gonna have to go through a full coordinated review? I guess if it's possible to make that decision, because coordinated review is a 60-day process. If we start that today, it potentially isn't going to affect the schedule based on the delays we have now.
Right, so for example, one of the secret questions, are agricultural lands consisting of highly productive soils present? You say no. Well, when we were doing comprehensive, this would have been 4 or 5 years ago, we had some of the most productive soils in the county and in the state. And I want to see actually the map that you decided that is not under, our ag soils are the best. I mean,
I'm just talking about where the building is. Because of where the building is, there was old foundation there. This whole area was disturbed before. It wasn't farmed before. I'm not speaking about the entire area. I'm speaking about the uses here, the septic system that was there. There was a bunch of activity there years ago, when you look at aerial photos and things. All of that is where this work is.
Right, but
That's,
typically we cite the soils maps, and we look at the soils maps for what you're proposing is a whole new structure, and normally we work with the soils map, so that's rather.
I have those.
Okay, so
They're
let's,
all in the SWIP.
okay,
and
great, we'll look
all
at
of that
that,
is in there.
okay.
I don't recall off the top of my head all the different soils, but you're absolutely correct. But this area was previously disturbed. The only reason I know that is because if something is previously disturbed, I have to change my classification. So if I have a C soil that's been disturbed, I gotta drop it down to a D because it's considered to be compacted. So I had to drop all of these soils down.
Okay,
So I guess my question to the board would be, given the information that we do have in here, that we do have in the seeker, do we have sufficient information to make an assessment, to make a declaration? Or do we feel that we don't have sufficient information? That's really the question. Because there's a lot of information in here, and no, there isn't all the information that we want.
Well, not all of it is in- Check,
Not all of it's
yeah.
answered, right?
Again, I know your copy doesn't have it. I'm
Well-
not sure if you know how those are filled out. They're populated by the DEC's website.
Yeah,
And sometimes you go to print it and you print it to a PDF, then you email it,
mhm.
depending how that individual opens it when they print
I
it.
think we have the same one though, Mo. Like the one that I have, I'm seeing the pertinent parts are checked like you have a yes or no, and then, all the other questions are if yes, but it was
Yeah,
answered no,
yeah.
so there's blanks. Is that what you're
Yes,
looking
right,
at?
yeah, but there
Yeah.
is one that doesn't have anything, which is, like I said,
And that's a big one. So that's
D1,
Page number.
D1, E, no, not D. Oh, not B.
D1B. I mean, D1B. I have
D1B. Oh,
D1.
wait a minute, no, not that one, I'm
No.
sorry. I have to look for it again, because I had it on my computer, but I don't have it. This is now hard copy.
I mean, for mine looks
Maybe- maybe-
complete other than, you know,
Well,
D2C, which asks about is capacity sufficient to meet the existing need.
Yeah, that's not
It's-
true.
It's
The
very
fire
possible
pond
that
issue of
the
all
one
the
that
water
we
they
have-
made, it's not
Yeah.
trivial.
It's
It
not trivial,
reverberates
yeah.
all the way through here.
Yeah.
From
Feel,
the- where they-
Yeah.
feel, I mean, you can,
Say that. doesn't-
yeah,
okay.
yeah. You can say that.
Appendix F should be seeker. We should have a paper copy in there, fully executed.
I actually, Mo, your issue for that whole section is dependent on the water issue. Well, is there enough for this, additional need for the fire? It reverberates all the way through here. And we don't know that yet. So, I mean, that fits in with, it's just, to me, that's insufficient information. So I'm on the water committee as well, and we're currently trying to assess, like, as you said, do we need additional water to pipe to different parts of the town? What are people using as their water source? And it's a really critical issue. So if you're already taking out, what is it, 4,000 gallons per day with the 25 extra beds, that's quite a bit of water, and to have to add all the fire water on top is not a trivial thing in terms of the town's water capacity. So that whole section really, it's very important that we get the facts for this.
Yeah, so I agree with Rebecca. I don't feel like we have sufficient information to say that there's a negative declaration.
So in here, so the key things are knowing about the water provisioning and fire, and then the swale on
The
the
buffer,
buffer.
the buffer and the setback, yep,
swale.
yep, and the stream.
Those are the two things.
Mhm.
And other than that,
That's right.
Right,
okay.
right, yeah.
And it's sort of the 500-year storm, but I want to check on the
Yes,
BBC
right, yeah. I'm-
calculations, right?
Yeah. Are there other things that the board would like to ask, or are there other things the board would like to request prior to our next meeting?
I think
Prior to the
I've
next.
covered all my questions.
The 239 recommendations, did Niels review those with you already? That was in the notes that Neil sent. About the lighting.
Let's get open that up.
Yeah, hold on, let me find it. There was lighting and there was one other thing. There were two things. I can't remember.
What page is blanking for you? What page is that? What page?
Oh, I'm looking at something else.
You're talking about this energy letter, Linda, you're talking about this recommended modification to the core energy
The
elements?
applicant is not the
Yeah, for
owner
exhibit D.
of-
Yeah, do you want to look at it?
Yeah, I got it. I think
Okay.
Oh, wait, maybe. it'll come up.
Right, because it is.
I can
All right.
make it bigger so you can read it.
So one of them was lighting and then there was one more.
Energy,
Just reviewing to see if you have another question.
yeah, she's
And it's I.
interested in that energy issue and the lighting issue that came through. Town requires us to consider the full energy elements for the
I mean-
construction project. Was that it? And then the other one,
Yeah.
and the second one was utilize lower LED lighting.
Right.
So there was a
Uh,
separate
okay,
application
great.
in secret for
Right.
watching. Might have seen-
Oh, Niels is here.
Yeah, this one, yeah. Yeah, no, it is, the only reason that I said, yeah, there were a couple of. not those. It is just no. That's right. But yes, I did
Neil?
find the areas, it was a little confusing.
Mhm. Okay.
Niels, do they know about the 239 review? Or they- Oh,
They- they
and
can-
then,
That you should have a copy of this.
Mhm.
Say, oh, I saw that.
yeah, right, okay, and
Thank you.
that's, there's no problem with those. Okay. We're good on that one. I'm just reading the letter.
It's a checklist.
Yes, right,
Mhm.
okay, cool.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, okay,
Mhm.
so in order to do the permit, is that a separate issue
I mean,
on the seeker?
we really aren't going to be able to do like special permit, unless until the BZA has done their approval. So we're essentially
Right.
trying to do things in tandem, just so,
Right.
because it's such a big project, we won't be able to get whatever information we need, now, so it doesn't get
Yeah.
held up. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that, but do we need the seeker approved to do the permit?
Um,
Yeah, but-
You'll have to decide on seeker before you vote on a permit.
yeah,
You can't do
okay,
any vote until
that's what I
seeker's
thought.
okay,
confirmed or
thank,
revote it.
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
But that's gonna be relevant for, I hate to be a pain, but like
Mhm.
BZA can't do anything until that decision's made, because you guys are doing one seeker.
Hmm.
And so how would, if we did not
Right.
approve a seeker, how much would that delay the
I mean-
BZA process?
At least, well, we could go through the process, but
Yeah.
we couldn't get a vote
Right,
for 60 days.
uh-huh. So,
You really can't do anything until they decide.
well, we can't make an assessment until they decide.
Right. because
And
that's
then-
the-
And
Then
they
then it
being-
comes to us.
Right,
and we can
right.
decide, but you can't really do anything until
Right.
they decide what
Right.
they're going to
right.
do.
Niels, do we
Well-
have this correct? Are we correct in, in our assessment that the BZA, I mean, they can make their, I believe that they could make their determination. I don't know, it's contrary to what you just said, but without the seeker, or they need that seeker approved ahead of time.
So the planning board
Mhm.
previously, sorry, I'm going to be able to get down to it.
That's okay.
2019 issued
Mhm.
a negative declaration.
Mhm.
So what's before the planning board again is to either reaffirm that, and then it's that we don't have to move forward anymore.
Mhm.
If the board feels there's been substantive changes since the project in 2019, or if there's been substantive new information, then the board should be compelled to reassess seeker.
Mhm.
What's before the BZA is an area variance, which is a type or action, type class action two, which it's the state's already decided that it doesn't, area variances don't require any additional environmental review.
Mhm.
So if the planning board is still, if the planning board decides that it does want to go through and do a full review again with the 60-day and all that stuff,
Mhm.
BZA should, I'll clarify with legal, but BZA should be able to go forward, hold their hearing on the area variances. the one that's still on plan. But I think we'll check on that.
So that's if we decide to do a review as opposed to a negative declaration.
Reaffirm.
Before they meet.
And what about a public hearing? I mean, I do feel like this is a significant
Well, that
change, and I mean, doesn't that happen?
would
either
come
way?
later.
Yeah.
That
Okay, so
would-
we'll
that would come
definitely
as
have that
well.
no matter what.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that has to
okay, I
happen.
want to make sure of that.
And that will
Yeah.
happen after the board determines seeker.
So my question about the seeker then, and forgive me, but if we make if we say that we don't have enough information to make a negative determination, we could either wait, or is there something to be said for going forward with the review? I mean, besides, because somebody else is also making assessment besides us. But they're not going to have complete information either. If we triggered that assessment to take place, there's still the question of the water. So,
I would think if the board determines it needs more information,
Mhm.
or seeker to be specific to the applicant, ask them for that information, and maybe consider holding a meeting, planning board meeting on the 16th,
Mhm.
which is already on here. Yeah, that
Mhm.
potential event at that
Mhm.
meeting, decide.
yeah, if you could get us that information by the 16th, and that's real,
This is
that's
it.
real soon.
Well,
That's,
So a couple things. One
Mhm.
is, we're not looking for you to make a decision on the deck tonight. We're just looking for you to kind of make a decision of which way you feel is appropriate to review it. Either way, there's information that is absolutely necessary for you to
Mhm.
get to the conclusion.
Mhm.
So we're not looking for the conclusion at
Yeah,
all, or
I
even
know.
which way would you think you're you're gonna go.
Mhm.
We're just looking for how we gonna get there. Because one
Mhm.
happens very quickly and it's an
know.
affirmation, and we do them all the time.
Mhm.
The other one, we have to start seeking over. Now, we're already
Mhm.
2 months into it, so it wasn't until just recently that I heard that there might be a new seeker done, and that's where I said, wait, we just gotta make sure that everybody knows we have to go through coordinated review again if we're gonna redo a seeker.
Mhm.
And that's the only thing we're asking right now.
Yeah.
We will not have answers to the water questions in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
I don't even know that we're gonna have a significant enough change over the answer that I gave you
Yeah.
tonight, because
Yeah.
so much of the information is
Mhm.
coming from other
Mhm.
parties that
Right,
are
right.
involved, and our hands are
Yeah,
tied to
yeah.
how quickly the team can put together.
And really, we can't move forward and, any of these questions before us, like the permit, et cetera, without that info. And I understand that, the seeker can take longer, but we really, we can't
Well,
say we're
wouldn't-
leaning one way or another.
Unless we,
I'm not saying-
unless we make an assumption of the worst case. And
Yeah,
then
but I don't think we should do that.
in order to do it,
Yeah.
well.
It's
I-
pretty huge. I mean, there's
Yeah, I know
several-
it
is.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, in
that's
the
what I
answer to the
mean.
2 questions that were
Mhm.
brought up, have significant things changed since the
Mhm.
last time? Yes, the total area was rezoned. I mean, it's totally different. That's changed the
Mhm.
setbacks. And, all right, second, a key piece of the information isn't available to us, like, oh, are you gonna need to have twice or 3 times the amount of water you currently have? Where's it gonna come from, and what's that gonna do to the entire site plan design?
Mhm.
If they have to put in underground tanks, if they have to put in the pond or expand the pond,
Mhm.
those are 2 major pieces of information that the seeker was done 3.5, 4 years ago. So to me, it's like, no, this is a huge thing for this town in terms of its
Mhm.
impact. And I'm not even looking, I don't focus on the lighting. I don't focus on the
Mhm.
issues of traffic or what it means socially to town. And I'm always relying on all of you to cover those topics. It's a big deal. We need to do it thoroughly and correctly. And to me, I realize you're under, but like you said, you just found out, oh, the same zoning changed. Things happen with COVID. We're all, dealing with that, but this is huge to me. And so I'm not comfortable even going with the seeker with a current plan that's missing elements to it.
Mhm.
So when they, and
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from,
Yeah.
the one thing that from my standpoint, what I see all the time is the water is not going to progress in the design unchecked. And that is one of the things is there is a solution. We just don't know which solution it is. Seeker is about determining the impact of the community. Nobody in this community, from the building department, the engineers that are reviewing things, and the county health department is going to allow something go in there that is not gonna meet the code. So proceeding with seeker, there is a solution. We know there's a solution. It's just which one is gonna work with what's going on. If you approve it and it's a condition of approval, that doesn't mean that it's just a free for all and whatever water can go in. This board is in charge of reviewing seeker and identifying whether the project is going to have a negative impact or a positive impact on the community. And if it is going to have some impacts, can those impacts be mitigated? Well, we've got the mitigation, we just don't know which one to put in.
Okay,
And if we don't have the mitigation, then you don't get a building permit, the project dies. So I guess I would ask, and I do this with all respect, is if we can be cognizant of what the end use is here, what the goal is, and can we maybe all work together to keep things moving? We're not looking to pull a fast one. We're not looking to do any of that. We fully recognize everything you're saying. And we're not saying we want to ignore it.
Mhm.
We need to get some approvals in place so that Oasis and DASNY and everybody are saying, they don't get this.
okay, so just to be clear, our job, the reason I've been on this so long is we're the town fathers who protect the resource of the town, which is critically for the long term, not just now.
Mhm.
And it's not just the community, it's the environment, all right?
Mhm.
It's the environmental impacts. That's why seekers half about the environment, not just social and community to most people,
Yep.
means the people impact. So water resources, I mean, we had a drought in 2016 when we were rivaling California for lack of water. If you're gonna go to wells as your additional source of water, I'm concerned. You'll be starting to, we
So
already
we
have
won't
people.
even get there.
Well,
because-
that's the point. We don't know what you're saying.
That's
There's
what your
different
professionals
solutions.
for. Like, we literally cross paths with 4 or 5 different agencies. We've called and we've already spoken with all of them to evaluate the options. And a well in this area is probably not a viable option because of the history of the wells in this area. And they couldn't draw enough water to be sustainable. And then it's not a guarantee at all times. So I see your point. I hope you
So-
understand it's
So
not
you-
falling on deaf ears.
What is the timing that you predict? You said that you wouldn't have the information about the water that Rebecca was asking about in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
When do you think you would have that information?
Our goal, and I'm being totally honest, was to get it in place
Mhm.
before we pulled a building permit, ideally before we went to bid,
Mhm.
which we were hoping to go into bid in July.
Mhm.
Our perfect scenario is we parallel path these approvals in the seeker while we are working through, and you guys as a board can see all the
So-
forward momentum in all the people we're talking to, so that we can get our approvals, get the variance, get all the approvals, get the seeker taken care of. We're ironing out how the water is gonna look. That's going to take months.
Mhm.
If we hold up seeker until there's a water, a
Mhm.
definite water path, then we're not gonna have any of our approvals until July.
So we
which-
could ask for a seeker, right? I mean,
Right now? No, I'm not gonna do it.
okay, we're
I'll
talking
do it
about, we're
further.
talking about different things.
Okay, all right.
Because I said
Okay.
something and you
sorry, I
don't know what,
misunderstood.
what I said.
I have a little
All right.
question. Do you have the old paperwork? on this?
I-
Have the old.
Yeah.
submission yet?
Well, I have a
Do
a
you think
question.
if we just go through that, if you can send it to us and we go through it, see what's in the old paperwork?
I don't think that's really valid because the project has changed. I guess my question would be if we didn't determine a negative, negative deter, if we said, what would pursuing a seeker, an assessment look like? Like what would be, because, I've been on this board for a year and a half, but I'm new enough that mostly we see, negative determinations. What would be our next steps with that? Like, what would that look like?
I'm not sure.
So, there's your two choices, right? You can make a negative, well, three, right? You could say, we need more information, we'll come back later. Or
Which
we
is
could
kind of where we're
say,
at.
this is where we're at, yeah.
Mhm.
Or you could say, negative determination, and we're not gonna get there. Just, we don't have enough information to do that. And then the other is, well, we think there should be a full environmental assessment. And, that's like your third option, right? What is that set into motion? What does that look like?
A lot more involved. It's a lot
Mhm.
more costly for the applicant to go through the EIS.
Project, yeah.
Hmm.
Project, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
And,
Well, That's why I asked for the older one, to see
Mhm.
what was done at that time.
I think if you, we compared them, in fact,
Mhm.
we may even have the comparison as a document, because that's one of the things that we did before we submitted, because we wanted to make sure that nothing we were submitting was gonna supersede the numbers we had in the previous neg deck. So that's why we concluded that this was gonna be just a reaffirmation. That's not to say that you don't evaluate seeker.
Mhm.
That's just to say that you've evaluated it, and your conclusion is the same as it was in
But I
2019.
guess, how did they make that determination without knowing the capacity, like the water capacity needs?
We had
and
the same
those
discussion.
things?
We were in the same boat, and it went.
Hmm.
That's, and that's why I apologize, I understand fully where you're
Yeah.
coming from, but that's one of the challenges and the frustrating things. We've been through all of this at the time, so there's a whole lot of marching orders that people are putting in place and things happening that
Hmm.
really aren't jiving now, because we're heading down a different
Hmm.
path.
But the zoning has changed.
Yeah.
Zoning and rules have changed. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
that's
it's
not
not-
us. I mean.
Correct, but that's ours, and as far as the zoning goes, the variance, once we get those variances, which now Niels has indicated as a slam dunk pretty much. Once we get those variances, we are completely zoning compliant. At that point, the fact that the zoning change should not change seeker, and should not be a hinge for holding up seeker.
Mhm.
Well,
But
that's why I said, because I remember when we did this the first time,
Mhm.
was also the same thing. There was a lot of concern about the water. That was never really, well, it just stopped. It just didn't come back.
but they did the approvals because they knew we were meeting and
Right.
working through all
We
the
gave the
details.
approval for what they had at that time.
Mhm.
Now it has changed, but
Mhm.
maybe some of the old paperwork might help us determine what we have to do next.
Mhm.
Because if they already went through all that paperwork, it might be almost the same.
What would you be looking for in there, Mo?
Just what they had originally in the assessment, for the entire, for the building that they had there, because the building was bigger. at that point, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, right, and if you look at the plan, it was much bigger, it covered a more of an area.
Mhm.
So maybe we might be able to.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, we might be able to go ahead if we know what they did the last time,
Hmm.
because the project is smaller.
Hmm. Mhm.
So it is a possibility. I'm not saying, we don't have that paperwork in front of us, so we don't know.
Mhm.
But they did go through a lot the last time.
Mhm. Mhm. I guess that does bring me back to my question of, we know a lot about the project,
Yeah, there was-
and then there's a part that we don't know.
Right. the part
And
that
it's
we don't know answers for,
right.
But you could maybe look at some of the other.
What were the assumptions made around water?
Right,
that allowed it
exactly.
to pass?
Yeah.
Well, would that be in the seeker though? I mean, I feel like that would be in maybe the.
No,
It would
that
probably be
wasn't-
in the
no, I think it
notes.
would
We
be
probably could look at
perhaps.
But
them.
that was more
Perhaps or
of
not.
the impact of the area.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what we're discussing right now. Is the impact
Right,
of the
right.
building.
Right, the environmental impact of the building
Right,
and
the
the waste.
water is
the
something
water
totally
treatment.
different that has to be figured out one way or the other.
Mhm.
But we might be able to
Mhm.
assess the impact
Mhm.
from the old papers
Mhm.
to see,
Or, yeah, or from what we have, I
or
mean,
from what we
it's-
have, yes.
which is not complete.
It's
Right.
not complete, and I'm uncomfortable because some of these things, I feel like you didn't do your homework. And so I'm like the setback and the buffer and then the stream that's not clearly designated along the entire top of the property. I just feel like
It's
I'm,
off our property. I can't survey it. I can't go on the adjacent
it
property.
still
and
has to have
survey
a
it.
buffer. You at least
Correct,
have to
but I'm
talk about it.
50
I mean,
Mhm.
I went
We
through
literally
carefully.
Set the buildings off 54 feet from the corner. If the new zoning buffer says no disturbance.
That's the whole point. It's got to be
Yep.
vegetated with natural vegetation, trees, not grass. And
we
so
can-
I felt like you were kind of obscuring information. I'm letting you know how I perceive the
That I
information
was
given.
obscuring info?
Yeah, that's a key thing about your design. And so for me to sit here and you don't have clear information about what you'll do and the way you presented it, what you do was, oh, we need extra water. I don't know, we're gonna do this and we have to get, I felt uncomfortable with this. I'm telling you how, because I feel uncomfortable.
She explained that there are other parties that she's communicating with about to find the best approach to the water issue that you raised. That I-
Yeah,
Yep.
I honestly, I have nothing to say
That-
because the amount of people involved in this that are not in this room right now
Right,
I
are
don't-
out of our hands.
but we have to make
I
a
don't think
decision
that
based
the-
on what you give us.
Mhm.
We don't make decisions based on what she's, someone
and
else.
we're
We
asking
just,
for more information.
we're asking,
Right.
for that's what I'm asking
Yes,
for.
that's
That's
right,
all.
that's
I'm-
right. And so, but I
That's
think
it.
it's-
Thank you, Matt. That's it.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't
I'm
we're clear
uncomfortable
that
with
we're
where
not-
I-
we're not calling into
Right.
question her.
I'm feeling
character.
pressure.
I did.
Mhm.
I was trying, well, I was trying.
that.
Your defense.
I guess I'm feeling pressured here
Uh-huh.
to,
There is no
Do
pressure
something,
to vote
okay.
or anything. My
Okay,
pressure
that's
is
how I
the
feel.
timing. No, to
Mhm.
be very clear, we fully understand you do not have enough information
right,
to vote tonight. What we are asking is, could you make a decision or a discussion, or could you have a discussion and we talk about it in 2 weeks? How you want to proceed? Are you comfortable that this project is significantly enough smaller than the previous project? And you compare the two seekers like we did, you will see that the majority of the information, if not all of it, is less than what was previously presented. So in cases like that, you do your full review just to confirm that you agree with all the information, and then you reaffirm seeker. That can happen without an additional coordinated review. You don't have to solicit for lead agency, all of that. However, if you're not comfortable doing that, and I think that there's enough information available to make that decision. If you're not comfortable doing that, and this has to go through a full seeker, I ask that you make the decision in a very timely fashion, because there's a 60-day clock starts that once he mails that out. So you make that decision tonight, he needs a few days to put stuff together, nothing's going out the door until
Mhm.
Monday. He's got to send out packages to all the involved and interested agencies. He's got to do a 30-day coordinated or 30-day lead agency solicitation. Then after 30 days, then he sends out all the
Right.
plans and everything, and then it goes
Yeah.
through a 30-day coordinated
But-
review. That's 60 days.
Let me say this. This plan isn't the final plan, and we will have an opportunity to look at what they present, and we'll have an opportunity to see that the buffer is or is not in, but I believe that because we're not signing off on the plans tonight, we're not saying this is okay to go as is. We're saying there's some questions that need to be answered before we can issue that special permit. I think we're saying they need to be answered. However, I think with the seeker, we could, I feel like ostensibly, we could say that given the scope of the plans, that the determination, that there's a negative determination potentially.
I don't
Given
see
the-
how you
given
can
the
do that.
scope.
We don't have enough information.
I mean, we don't
that's
know
what
about the water part,
I'm worried
Yeah.
because the
but we
time
could
frame.
also say, we need to get more information.
We're
You're
not
not
asking for a negative determination
Mhm.
tonight.
Then
We're
I-
just
then I'm-
asking,
But I'm not quite sure what you're asking for, to be honest.
we're asking if you, if the board feels that this project is close enough to the previous project, that it doesn't need to go through a full coordinated review. What that means is sending it out to all the
Mhm.
involved and interested parties. So
Yeah.
in seeker. on
No,
page-
I get that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't,
But even if we
Yeah.
did a coordinated review, we never will have the information on the
No.
water till
Till-
just
Right.
before you implement.
Exactly.
yeah.
Correct.
So it doesn't even matter if we do a
Well,
coordinated
that's why I
review.
said if you see
So
the
how are
old-
we gonna ever, yeah,
Mhm.
If we
Yeah.
can look at the older review that we
Mhm.
had, it might,
and why we made that call. then.
right, why we made those calls at that time.
Mhm.
So can I offer this? How about in 2 weeks, if there's information to present, we'll get it to Niels as soon as it's ready, and then he can circulate it. So I drive 3.5 hours to get here. So how about in 2 weeks, it sounds like you guys are gonna have a meeting. We'll be on
Well,
the
not
agenda
necessarily. I mean,
potentially. All
I
right,
just
well, I guess we would
scratch the
just
2
like
weeks part. just-
feedback
mhm,
if you guys as a group wanna discuss. And then maybe
mhm.
in 2 weeks at the next meeting or some other date you choose. We just need to know if you think this is, that you're gonna, the town in this board is gonna want this to go for a coordinated review. Now, let me just ask a really critical
Mhm.
question. I don't recall, are you a recommending body or a voting body?
Or a voting body.
So when,
So-
when you grant all your
Mhm.
approvals, we're done, or it goes to the town board?
No, we're done. Yeah, we're
Right, and
done.
that's
Yeah,
it, right? Okay,
yeah.
some towns you are recommending,
Mhm,
and that means it then go to the town board, so the questions I'm asking
Yeah.
would have had to been answered by the town board.
mhm,
But since you're a voting body and you're good and it ends with you, the decision's yours.
mhm.
So we just need to know whether in the water, the fact that the water isn't answered and
Mhm.
that we've got to figure out the
Mhm.
buffer. In my mind, that isn't enough to
Mhm.
justify going through a full coordinated review.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
when
in
I-
a
by doing
way.
Reaffirmation, you're
Yeah,
still
yeah.
reviewing it the same.
Were those questions answered in the previous speaker?
Yes.
A different seeker.
And I guess
Before the
is there a
result
difference
answer.
between a reaffirmation and a negative determination? It doesn't sound like it because
No,
they
the
determine
negative-
negatively.
The neg deck is the result. You get a
Right.
neg deck out of the process
Right.
of reaffirming seeker, or you could get a neg deck out of the process of doing the full coordinated review.
Mhm.
By
Can I
reaffirming
ask a-
seeker,
I'm sorry, Christine, can I ask a question just for my own clarity? So I think that what we're asking is, are we gonna, go on the understanding that we can potentially reaffirm versus going through the process, right? So tonight, if we say you're comfortable not asking us to go through the full 60-day process, in the event that we can produce all of the information that you're asking for, and then we come back here in 2 weeks or however long, and we have all of that information at that time, you say you didn't give us what we needed, and then you say, now you need to go through the whole process. Right, so you're not making a determination tonight, you're just deciding for us what our next step is in terms of what we're doing.
So really, the next step is that we want that information so we can make our determination, right? Of either to reaffirm and, and
Yeah.
say there's a negative declaration, or to say, oh my goodness, this needs a full. And so that's what we're asking for. We're not looking at this plan tonight and saying, oh my God, you got to do a full assessment. Like, that's not what we're doing, but we don't have enough to make that detour. So that's where we are. We can't
My
really give
impression
you
is
more than
guys
that.
Are comfortable reaffirming as long as we produce the answers to these questions that you're asking.
No, I don't want to say that. I
Not
want
reaffirming
the
right now.
answers. That's
But
all I
that's the
want.
thing, so
And I'm not
that's
gonna,
the thing.
say how we're gonna go. I'm gonna say
That's
we
not
need,
what I meant.
that's okay. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah,
We are just asking for the information,
so.
and
so I-
we can
very
make a
happy to
determination
bring
when we
forward
have
more
that.
information so
Great.
that then you guys can decide if you're comfortable reaffirming, or if at that point you want us to move forward with the full process.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
just want to make sure I understood the
Mhm.
process.
Thanks. All right. All right. Does
So as
anybody
it
else?
stands,
Yeah.
I understand, it.
Mhm.
we're gonna wait for more information before we do anything,
Mhm.
which is as much as you can give us.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's exactly what we came here to
Yes.
achieve until I brought up the whole reaffirm versus.
Mhm.
And hopefully you understand the differential in what it means. And
Mhm.
So if you can give us all that information, then we can determine
Mhm.
if we have to go through the entire process again, or.
If we could
we're
reaffirm.
gonna Keep the old process that we had originally.
Mhm. Mhm.
now let me ask, because again, we're trying to be respectful of time. If, with all these parties involved, if we come up with a solution that satisfies everybody, but it takes X amount of time to actually physically design it and get it on the plan. If we have the documentation that there's a solution and we have the sign off that this is where everybody's headed from all the different parties involved, and we bring that in absence of the detailed construction document showing how it's gonna be built, because that's what's gonna take the most time.
I know, yeah.
We're gonna get to conclusions much quicker.
Mm.
But for us to get to the point where we have something to draw on that plan that is going to, I think, make everybody here happy, that's months, months and months, months.
Mhm.
So I guess I would just ask that you consider, if we come to you with a solid plan with all of the involved parties buy-in and authorization, I'd like you to consider that that is enough to satisfy your secret concern, because at that
And-
point, it's a technical.
And,
design.
and what authorizations are you referring to?
So right now, I don't know all the parties involved, because I'm not
Mhm.
intimately involved with it. But we're
Mhm.
dealing with the town, we're dealing with the village, we're dealing
Mhm.
with the county. We're dealing with the residents that have connected to the line.
Mhm.
We're dealing with the engineer. Yeah,
Mhm.
there's a ton of people that are involved, out of the common stakeholders in the decision. They all have to buy into it, and that's what's holding us up.
Mhm.
That wasn't a factor, I'd have that designed and we'd be approved and we'd get our neg deck tonight.
Mhm.
But because there are so many factors that have come out and surfaced,
Mhm.
we can't get to a design yet. And no one's gonna pay me to design something just to get approved, only to redesign it,
Mhm.
which truthfully we could do. We could design
Mhm.
something this week that absolutely works. But I don't know that everybody's gonna be okay with it or it's gonna meet all the criteria,
Right,
because we don't have the
Right,
criteria.
and then we'd be back
So-
here, right?
When you get the sign off, you're talking about somebody who will approve what you're going to decide.
That'll happen after the
Right,
approval.
but
When
I'm
I
just saying,
say,
they're approving
Yep.
what you have told them that you're going to do.
Well,
yeah, we would have
yeah.
to do a full design and have it
Mhm.
approved by fire department
Mhm.
Right, exactly, yeah,
Everybody.
yeah.
before construction. But what, like, I guess what I'm saying is we come to the meeting with,
Mhm.
let's say we're working with the town, whoever the individual with the town that's overseeing everything, you know, maybe he signs off on what the agreement is, and we're all on the same page, and all of the vested parties are on the same page. In the design, the designs are all doable. It's just what everybody's okay with.
Mhm.
So
If-
I think once you know
Yeah.
what everybody's okay with,
Mhm.
and the fact that we can design it and it's in design, and it's not gonna affect the site,
Yeah. If you have all that,
Yeah.
contact Niels
we will.
and,
Yep.
and then, we'll go from there.
And that's what
Yeah.
we will. Okay.
That is a possibility because
Yeah. 'cause-
if we, even if we approve it, it would have to be approved on all of those signatures. So if somebody backs out of it,
Mhm.
the approval is gone.
Mhm.
So we could do something like
Yeah,
that. Yes,
yeah,
they
that would
can
make
at least
sense.
proceed
Mhm.
as long as everybody signed off on every item. And then
Mhm.
comes to design, which we
Mhm.
will see anyway.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a doable situation.
Yeah.
Because what we would hear is something like, okay, so for fire, so we'll get water from the town, from the village, and we'll have a holding tank for
Mhm.
fires
Mhm.
above ground.
Right.
So then we'd have to design, we don't know exactly where it's gonna be, we don't know
Exactly.
what your
Right.
pipes
But you would
are.
have that approved.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you will have the
I think
approval
that-
Yeah,
in
I do too.
spirit. And then we'll just, and then from
Yeah.
a site review, we may
Mhm.
not know exactly where it is, but we
Yeah, and
can.
Right.
it may
Well,
not even
eventually
be
we
something
will.
that appears on there.
Right.
Right.
It might be a buried tank that's up behind the
Mhm.
building.
Well,
or
no, this
something.
isn't above ground.
Yeah, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
but
I don't think you're gonna wanna do that.
But
So
if the approvals, yes.
And I
if
like
there's
that.
approvals.
All right.
Yeah.
that's a good compromise.
Yeah.
Hopefully keeps everybody.
Oh, well, we have somebody here.
Go
You're
ahead.
frowning.
Yeah, he's frowning, yes.
Mhm. What do you have?
Pardon me if I'm new again. So,
Yeah.
but under local code, local law for site plan review, and hopefully this can assuage some concerns, like should the planning board grant approval again, like it did in 2019? the applicant is still required to submit a final detailed site plan with construction plans. And part of that is, can be performance guarantees and conditions by the planning board.
Mhm.
So the detailed information that the applicant's not going to be able to provide, within 60 days or a time fashion. So that assuage all your concerns for seeker can be.
Revisited?
Well, not revisited. by the
Contingent.
planning board, but
Addressed.
at
Yeah.
that time. If there's any concerns, like, we can bring that at that point.
That's kind of what I
I
said
like that.
before.
Yeah.
compromise, I guess.
Okay.
I know it's not their jurisdiction from a planning perspective, but do you have any support from the Tompkins County Legislature or can you speak to any other community partnerships in any part of the county?
Sure. So I will first note that we have recently affiliated with the Kiva Health System. So we're partnered with the medical community across the region. We absolutely have the support. So there's a substance use disorder committee that meets on a monthly basis. I report out regularly that we're still trying to get the project moving. So we have Tompkins County support, we have the committee support. All of those things happen very early on in the project. We also have the treatment court is regularly asking what the status of this is. So when they're working with patients who are challenged with substance use disorder, they're sending women out of the community right now for treatment, creating additional separation with them and their children. And so regularly the treatment court system in Tompkins County is asking what the status of this project is. And so there's been a lot of unfortunate barriers to the project. It's been in the works for about 6 years, which is why because of revisiting a lot of stuff tonight, because it has been in the works for a really long time. But in terms of community support, there's a pretty substantial backing to this project. They've been waiting for
Look, isn't Chuck Schumer, he was involved, right? I mean, politically,
potentially before. Yeah, I've been involved for about half of it. So I came on in 2020, early 2020, just in time for the pandemic.
Okay.
So I wasn't here in the beginning of the original RFPs, but have definitely had support. Obviously, Anna Kelly's office is very supportive. Legislators who talk to her periodically.
I've not dealt with anybody directly, because I'm not here, but I do know from the engineering and from where I sit, the stuff I do, there's a ton of support. And the reason I know that is because I used to be the president of the State Contractors Association for 2 years, and I met a ton of the legislators and things. When we were here before, and just recently, if a bill hits the floor that's got some aspect to it, legislator, that could potentially negatively affect this project or any of my projects, and we know that, especially my big ones, they'll call and say, hey, this is about to happen. You need to make calls and get everybody on board to vote stuff. There was a prevailing wage bill that was presented 2 years ago, and my phone blew up. And we were able to stop it, but the prevailing wage bill that they were considering, they had put it on the tails of another bill, and it would have significantly changed the cost of this project by imposing prevailing wage in areas that didn't currently exist. And that tells me that they're listening, that they're aware of this. We're doing another one of these out in Western New York. So it's an issue, and we're coming up at an election year, so I think it's just going to become more and more of an issue.
Okay. All right. Oh, great. I think we've had a great discussion tonight. I want to thank you for your presentation and for bearing, for answering our questions. And I think it's clear what we're looking for, and Niels is also going to write it up and he'll send it to you. And then we'll go from there.
And then just some feedback of what you think about the next meeting. If you don't think you're going to have it, let us know, or if you're going to have it, we
Well,
can virtually.
I mean, I don't think we're gonna have, we'll discuss and we'll let you know if we're gonna look at this issue at the next meeting.
Okay, and the BZA thing is a definite, right? It's not even, we need to look into it. It's canceled.
The chair. So chat about making a request to them for a special meeting and.
Do you do that, or do I do that? I'm officially requesting that you request the BZA. No, if you let me know what to do, I can send the chair, the chairwoman or a chairman. I can't remember. Chairman, I can send the chairman email or something. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And what is your name again?
Kristen.
Kristen. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for getting me out of my house for an entire night. For COVID, I was on the road all the time and I love getting away. I have all the ways, so. And then COVID hit. I was in the house.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
Um,
very much.
We have 3 orders of business. One is liaisons report. Rich, do you have anything to report? Well, I do, but I wanted to ask about, okay. All right, sounds good. So the other part was you had wanted to speak about the law that, you know, modified language and around requirements
Yeah, I
for
could just give a quick overview.
training, but I
Mhm.
wanted to ask,
Mhm.
because I looked for the notes from the town board meeting from the 25th, and you know, they're not on the website yet. So I don't know if that law passed or not. You tabled it. Okay, so, okay. So with that said, I feel like it's appropriate to have this discussion here. If it had passed, I think our discussion would be moot.
I don't know, it didn't pass.
But it didn't pass, it tabled. Okay,
So
okay.
I just wanted, it came out as a bit of, I felt like I had missed a meeting, so maybe you all knew about this happening. A law was proposed to change such that if any board member missed a certain number of trainings, they would be cited as having guilty of misconduct. I don't know about you all, but that would be not good, like, because it goes on the records and it goes on the internet. And for me as a professional to have the term misconduct associated with me as a professional would be really deleterious. I can imagine sentences like she didn't take the sexual harassment training and is guilty of misconduct. And those terms are out there. And so it was, to me, very poor thinking about, in many ways. One, we volunteer, we work tons of hours. I know I've been here for hundreds of hours. We do our best to take the trainings, and sometimes I've given numbers of these trainings myself. And sometimes, you know, okay, I have a full-time job, and if the training's during that time, I don't get to take it. And so there's reasons we don't take the trainings, or we're behind. And I'm behind right now, actually, but aside from that. So to me, it was like, oh, this is not a good way to handle this when people are volunteering their time to have this punitive authoritarian approach to trainings. And instead of, ideally, our leadership should have said, listen, guys, we're just not getting you all to do the trainings we need. It's required. What can we do to make it better for you? Can we schedule during our regular times? We'll do a series of trainings every time we meet for half an hour or an hour. I mean, there are solutions to this. So to make it a law was, you know, a rule that was a negative kind of, you know, destructive, non-respectful and insulting to me. I thought, so I don't know if you had all heard about it when it was being developed, and I thought,
No.
I didn't.
I just read about it before.
right, you
Yeah.
weren't
I
aware
think
either.
that, yeah, it is difficult when, you know, they say Wednesday at 10 o'clock, there's training, but okay, so I'm busy.
I have a
So I
job.
missed that one.
Right,
And then the next time they do the same thing and I'm busy and I miss that one. So if I miss 3,
right,
I can't see why we can't do it like, you know,
Yeah.
a session like here.
right.
Okay, so you can,
Mhm.
you can do all the trainings by Zoom. You don't have to show up, you can do them at your leisure from your house.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a good
I
solution.
should misunderstand.
Yes, but the
Okay,
term,
well, then
the
that's a
wording
good
was
solution.
really
Completely
poor.
agree. And I take it on me as the liaison. I didn't actually, it was crafted with our local attorney. And I didn't review it before the board,
Okay,
meeting, which I should.
Okay, okay.
That's how it
I
happened.
apologize.
Alright.
But
Thanks,
I am not going to allow that word to
Okay.
Great.
stand in the law.
okay.
Thank you.
I would hope you would actually pass the next wording passes, because if something gets passed without having seen it and it has that same kind of
Mm.
intention to it, I would resign. I cannot afford to have that kind of, okay. I mean, you were,
I'm totally sympathetic.
okay. And also, I'm a little bit like, why aren't you caring about us as volunteers.
You
know,
I think because we had an incident last year, of sexual harassment. With that,
Mhm.
the lawyer suggested we put in place these extra measures. So if we were sued, we
Mhm,
would be more protected.
Mhm.
mhm,
So it's just from a real life incident.
But
mhm.
still balance it with what we all do as
Totally.
volunteers.
And it was just, it was legally put into law. And that's why in a way, that's why we have public hearing here. So we're gonna change it.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah, as long as we can do it on Zoom, that's perfect.
You
Well-
can do it on Zoom.
Or, you know, even if you
Okay,
have it.
yeah,
At any time you want, or?
Yeah, as long as you do the 4 hours a year.
So-
Then you're gonna have 90 days, 60, 90 days after the year to make it up.
I have a
mhm,
question. Okay, so I thought it was just what the law was addressing was the sexual harassment, civic, yeah, ethics,
Yeah.
ethics and
Right.
civic.
That's right.
Those, just those three. That wouldn't be our total 4 hours. That's only a couple hours, right?
Well, I don't know, the
Yeah.
training we did last year in person, in addition to.
Yeah. because
Oh,
I-
it's
I
in
signed the
addition to
paper
our 4
for it,
hours?
And then I gave it to the clerk and I had to sign off on that particular, and I think you're having it in May.
Yeah, but if you can't make it in person, you can watch,
Right.
you can do it online.
Yeah, see, that was
So-
ambiguous in it too, though, Rich. I think.
so a question
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
like the intent of the law, because I know that some people they don't do the training and like potentially, right? Potentially somebody doesn't do the training.
You
Can
shouldn't be
they-
on the planning board.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, does the law contain any language about, removal from or unappointment from if these,
Yeah, it
if
does.
these,
Yeah,
okay, okay,
so I think we need to be protected to know that people have done this training.
yeah,
If you don't do the training, it's not 4 hours, you can't find the bond.
Yeah.
Then you shouldn't be on the board.
And
Yeah,
that's easy
yeah.
then. Just say the person will have to be removed from the
Right.
board, but
Yeah.
that's not the same as what was.
I completely,
Stated.
Rebecca.
Okay.
Yeah.
on your
Okay.
side.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm just making sure it's not gonna happen again.
Yeah.
Because very upsetting, yeah.
And I was just
Okay.
bringing that up because I was kind of trying to like suggest an alternative to, misconduct is just,
Yeah.
here's what'll happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just take that word.
Yeah.
There's a lawyer's unfortunate use of legal.
Yeah, I knew it. I was like, this is definitely, I mean, we have a new attorney and it seems like, I kind of can see that in some ways. Yeah, and I think this is one of them.
But there was a there was a reason for it. It didn't
I'm
come
sure.
out of thin air. Dr.
Yeah.
Kerwin,
Yeah, okay,
and we won't stand.
all right.
You
Thank
definitely
you.
got people agitated, I'll tell you that, man.
Yeah.
Certainly the academics got agitated.
Well, yeah, our jobs, it's like, my God, I'll have to quit. I can't have that.
Okay. Any other discussion on that?
No, thank you for
All
letting us
right.
talk about it.
Yeah. So anything else from the board, Rich?
We're working on filling up the positions on the comp plan. We should have that done hopefully for our next town board meeting. At least more people to approve. Right?
A few more and then hopefully more fleshed out at the end of the month.
So we're moving towards that. They've already had, have you been to the meeting?
Yeah, it was excellent. There's some new people in it with younger people in it, which is fantastic, and it's well organized. Nelson's done a good job organizing. Mo said he had
I
trouble with
couldn't-
the Zoom.
Yeah, I had a sciatica. I couldn't walk.
Mm.
So I saw it on Zoom, but unfortunately the sound was very poor. But luckily it wasn't anything important, really. Rebecca filled me in and what was.
Wait, I didn't say
Wait a
that.
minute.
I did not say that. I said it was mainly introduction.
Right, just introduction.
Introduction.
And
I know,
strategy
I
for how we were gonna.
And I did
proceed. Yeah.
introduce myself.
And that's, it wasn't.
I wasn't exactly sure if anybody
I
heard.
think we're gonna play Scrabble at the beginning of this. meeting.
Well, they did, at first they did.
Scrabble is very important.
Yeah. But I'm just saying it wasn't any discussion
Yeah.
on the plan.
All right, all right. So lastly, we've talked a little bit about this, is having a vice chairperson for the board that would, not just be elected on the spot if somebody got sick, but is actually, the designated vice chairperson. So if the chair needs to take vacation, or if the chair knows they're going to be sick or something like that, the vice chair can prepare. And, so I just wanted to see if people here had thought about that, and if if anybody's interested, they could identify themselves and we could vote on that tonight.
Okay, I thought about a time. I
Mhm.
really appreciate what you do. You have no freaking idea how much. I've watched Linda when she was in her position.
Mhm.
I'm on the water board, the water
Mhm.
committee, comprehensive plan, this one, and a full-time job, and I am hanging on by a
Yep.
thread.
Yep.
I can, the administrative piece of what you do in this job, I can't do
You
it.
you don't have to give
Okay,
us
okay,
your
I can't-
resume,
I feel
Rebecca.
really
We know
bad
you're
about
very
it.
involved. Don't
I
feel
know, I
bad.
feel so bad.
That's
I
why
felt-
you're on so many
I
boards,
know, I
because
just
you
feel like I
feel
should help
bad.
you out by
Yeah,
just
no,
saying
it's
I'll
o-
be
it's okay.
But we
faithful.
need you
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
All right.
We need you
Okay.
not to,
Okay, all right.
we need that thread to not
I'm
break.
feeling like I should,
No,
help
it's
you with
okay.
it.
It's
Okay.
okay.
but no,
No, they tried to put the
Mhm.
chair on the steering committee, and I
This is
said,
vice chair mode,
vice chair, I'm sorry. vice
not
chair
even,
On that,
you
and I
know.
said no. So.
okay, okay.
Yeah, I'd be willing to do it.
Okay.
I do, Linda, you always do it. You're the best.
But only because I've had the background.
Yeah,
I think that.
yeah.
makes sense.
That makes sense. Okay,
So I'm okay. with it.
okay.
I'll move to. Is it
Vote.
vote for Linda
Well,
Little?
first we have to nominate.
Oh,
I
right.
know, I know,
Okay.
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 I'll move to appoint her to vice chair.
Second,
Any discussion?
no.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Too, But I know he's gonna be around.
Oh,
And that brings us to the end of our meeting tonight. So
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
thank you.
great.
Second.
Second, it.
Excellent.
Oh,
All in
thank you.
favor. Thank you.
Pete,
Aye.
thanks again for your leadership
Oh,
during this conversation.
Thanks.
You didn't cave. I was feeling under pressure, like I should say yes, but
Uh-huh.
didn't feel like there was enough there.
Yeah.
Like you should change so much.
I think it's fine. I think we need to have the information we need.
So I'm
You know,
curious.
so
Is it
it's been 3 years.
Yeah, years.
Like,
Three and a half.
why do they need it? Why do they need it 2 weeks?
Yeah, I
You know,
understand
I'm
that,
like,
but
are you
I shouldn't
serious?
say it, but all of a sudden it has to happen all at once.
I mean,
get that.
I'm all about having this facility, you know, treat people in the community that need it. At the same time, it is a crucial piece. I did play around with, well, maybe we could do a non-deter because we still will have oversight going forward. So I did play around with
Yep.
that. And you had a very firm feeling about that,
Yeah.
and you weren't alone either.
Yeah.
And I think they can't really get anywhere without that. And once they have it, we'll probably